The wind howled outside Derek's small cabin. Snow had covered everything in white. The heaters inside worked hard to keep the cold away. It was supposed to be a quiet night. Like all others, Derek sat alone, eating a hot bowl of soup, staring. At the flickering light above the table, he lived at the edge of the colony zone. Far from others, no one came here unless they were lost, desperate, or in trouble. So when he heard a soft knock on his door, he froze. It wasn't loud, just a weak, slow knock, like someone was too tired to try harder. He stood up, his hand reaching for the old plasma pistol by the shelf. Another knock came, softer than the first. He opened the door slowly, carefully. What he saw made him blink in shock. A tall, alien woman, thin and trembling, stood before him. Her clothes were torn, covered in dirt and snow, in her arms. She held a small child wrapped in a thin blanket. The child looked half-conscious, lips blue from cold. The woman fell to her knees right there. Her voice cracked as she begged, "Please, feed my daughter, human. I'll stay quiet. I'll cook. I'll stay in your bed if you want. Just help her." Derek didn't know what to say. He looked at the child, then at the woman. Something in him said this wasn't a trick. This was real. They were starving, cold and broken. Without a word, he stepped aside. The woman crawled in. Holding her daughter close, he shut the door and locked it. The woman sat on the floor, placing the child near the heater. She didn't even ask for food for herself, just looked at her daughter with tired eyes. Derek rushed to the kitchen and poured the rest of his soup into a bowl. He brought it over and handed it to her. The woman didn't touch it. Instead, she lifted the spoon to the child's mouth and began feeding her slowly, carefully. She whispered something in a strange language, her eyes wet, but she didn't cry. "What's your name?" Derek asked, gently. The woman looked up, then down again. "Vetra," she said softly. "Her name is Linya." He nodded, unsure what else to say. The room was quiet, except for the sound of the wind outside and the child slowly eating the soup. Derek brought a thick blanket and wrapped it around both of them. The woman flinched at first, but then relaxed. He noticed the bruises on her arms, the burn marks on her wrist. Linya's small face had scratches, like she had fallen many times. They had been through something terrible. He didn't ask more questions. Not tonight. Later, Vetra tried to stand. "I will cook," she whispered. "I promised." But her knees gave out, and she dropped back to the floor. Derek caught her before she fell. "No," he said. "You don't have to prove anything." He helped her sit on the couch. Linya had fallen asleep by now, her small chest rising and falling softly. Derek placed her on a soft cushion and covered her with another blanket. Vetra's eyes followed every move, like she still couldn't believe it was real. "Do you have others chasing you?" Derek asked quietly. Vetra nodded slowly. "Bad men slavers. They take mothers and sell the children." Derek's hands clenched. He didn't say anything, but his face showed what he felt. Anger and something else. Something like protectiveness. Vetra leaned back against the wall, her eyes heavy. "If you want, I'll leave in the morning," she whispered. "But just let her eat tonight." Derek looked at the child, now safe and warm. Then at the woman who gave up her pride, her fear, everything for that child. "You'll stay," he said. Both of you, Vetra, looked up at him, confused. "You said you'd stay quiet, cook, sleep by the bed," he continued. "But I'm not asking for that. I'm just asking you to stay alive." The room fell silent again, but this time it felt softer. Like the snow outside was no longer trying to break in. Vetra closed her eyes slowly, her head dropping against the wall. She was asleep before she could thank him. Derek stood there a moment longer, watching them both. He didn't know what would happen tomorrow, but tonight he had done the right thing, even if it changed everything forever. The sun rose slowly over the frozen colony land. A weak light pushed through the clouds, touching the snow-covered world with a pale glow. Inside Derek's cabin, the air felt warmer, calmer, different. Vetra was still asleep. Curled in a sitting position near the wall, Linya, her small daughter, lay quietly beside her. The blankets wrapped tight around her tiny body. Derek had barely slept. He sat near the window, holding a warm drink in his hands, watching both mother and child. His thoughts ran in circles. Who were they? Really? Why did she come to him? And what kind of danger was following them? When Vetra opened her eyes, she looked around like a hunted animal. But when she saw Linya safe and warm, her shoulders relaxed just a little. Then she noticed Derek watching her. She lowered her eyes quickly, like she expected punishment for still being there. "I can cook now," she said softly. "You don't need to," Derek replied. "Just eat something." She shook her head. "I only eat after Linya eats." Derek sighed and stood. "Then I'll make enough for both of you in the kitchen." Derek prepared basic food bread, some dried meat, and rehydrated fruits. He placed the plates down in front of them. Linya sat up slowly, sniffing the food, her eyes wide. Vetra helped her eat first, then finally picked up a piece of bread for herself. She chewed slowly, like she wasn't sure it was real. Derek sat across from her, his voice calm but direct. "You don't have to tell me everything," he said. "But I need to know who you're running from." Vetra wiped her mouth, took a breath, and nodded. "My kind." "We were brought here to work," she began, "not as guests, not as friends, but as tools." Her voice was slow, careful. She didn't look at him as she spoke. "They took my husband first, said he was too strong. Too dangerous," she continued. "Then they separated the mothers from the fathers, and the children from everyone. I escaped with Linya when the power grid went down during a storm." Derek listened closely. He'd heard rumors of labor camps on the far moons. Hidden from official eyes, Vetra wasn't the first to run, but she was the first to knock on his door. "They want Linya," she whispered. "Not for labor, but for study. She's different." Derek leaned forward. "Different? How?" Vetra looked into his eyes for the first time, her voice firm. "She remembers things she's never seen. She speaks languages she never learned." Derek turned toward the little girl. Linya was humming softly, drawing in the dust on the wooden table with her fingers. Symbols, curves, circles, none of them human. "Is that her language?" he asked. Vetra shook her head. "No, I don't know what it is." The air inside the cabin felt heavier, like the truth had weight. "Do you think they're still looking for you?" Derek asked. "I know they are," Vetra answered. "They don't give up easy when something is rare." Derek stood and walked to the window. Snow was falling again, but not heavy. Tracks from last night had almost disappeared. He rubbed his jaw, thinking he wasn't the hero type, never had been. But something inside him wouldn't let this go. "I've got an old basement hatch under the floor," he said. "If someone comes, you can hide there." Vetra looked up in shock. "You'd protect us?" "I already did," Derek replied. "Might as well finish the job." Vetra stood slowly and walked to where Linya sat. Still drawing strange symbols, she kissed the top of her daughter's head and whispered, "We're safe, for now, later." That afternoon, Derek brought out a few old blankets and some extra clothes from a trunk. "Here," he said. "They're not pretty, but they'll keep you warm." Vetra touched the fabric like it was gold. "Thank you," she whispered. "We've had nothing soft in a long time." Linya walked up to Derek suddenly and handed him a drawing. It was simple 3 figures holding hands under a starry sky. One was tall like him, one smaller like Vetra, and the last had wings and stars around her head. He smiled. "Is this us?" Linya nodded. "You make the stars quiet," she said, in her soft alien accent. Derek didn't know what she meant, but the words stayed in his heart for the first time in a long while. His cabin didn't feel empty. It felt ... needed. He still didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for now, he had a purpose, and it was standing right in front of him. That night, the snow fell harder. The wind pushed against the wooden cabin like it wanted to get in. The lights inside flickered once. But held, Derek sat by the fire, watching the flames dance. He could hear Linnea's soft breathing from the small couch. She was wrapped in 2 blankets and sleeping deeply. Finally warm, Vetra stood near the wall, quiet. Her hands folded in front of her. She had been like that for an hour, unmoving. Watching her daughter like a guard, Derek spoke gently. "You can rest too, Vetra." She didn't answer right away. "I'll sleep where I belong." She finally whispered, "By the door." Like before, he frowned, confused. Why the door? "In the camps," she said, her voice barely a sound. "They made us sleep near the doors, to be the first ones taken if someone tried to run." Derek felt something deep twist inside his chest. "Vetra," he said, standing up. "You're not there anymore." But she shook her head. "My body knows, even if my mind forgets." She took a thin blanket, walked to the door, and curled up right next to it. She didn't ask for a pillow, didn't even close her eyes fully, just lay there. Listening, waiting, Derek sighed, and turned off the lights, letting the fire give the room a soft glow. He went to bed, but he didn't sleep. In the quiet of the night, he heard her whispering again. Not in English, but in her own language. It was soft, like a lullaby, but full of pain. He imagined her singing those same words while behind metal walls, cold floors, and guards with weapons. Linnea stirred once, then calmed again, as if the words comforted her, sometime past midnight. Derek got out of bed and walked over quietly. Vetra opened her eyes, not surprised to see him. "I'm not trying to spy," he said. "Just checking, I know." She replied, her voice almost kind this time. "Do you ever sleep deeply?" He asked. "No," she said. "Mothers don't get that choice when they're hunted." He sat beside her, leaning his back against the door. She didn't move away. The fire crackled behind them, warming the room just enough. After a long pause, she spoke again. "You're different from the others. I'm not sure that's good or bad." He replied, "It's good," she said. "You didn't ask for anything, not even trust." Derek looked over at Linnea, still safe and sleeping. "She's what matters to you most, isn't she?" "Yes," Vetra answered. Without hesitation, "She's all I have left, all I am." "Where's her father?" Derek asked, careful not to push too hard. "Dead?" she said, eyes closing for a second. "They took him during selection, called him to Defiant. He never returned." Silence filled the space again, heavy like a blanket too thick to breathe. "I'm sorry," Derek said quietly. Vetra opened her eyes again and looked at him. "You're the first one to say that." Derek stood and offered her a hand. "Come sleep on the couch. It's warmer." She looked at his hand, unsure. Then slowly placed hers in it and stood. Her hand was cold, her fingers thin. He led her to the couch, helped her lie down, and covered her with an extra blanket. He placed another pillow under her head. "This is kindness," he said, "not charity." She didn't reply, but her eyes stayed on him as he returned to his bed. That night, Vetra didn't whisper. She didn't hum. She simply watched the ceiling until her eyes grew heavy. And then, for the first time in a long while, she fell into a deep sleep in the early morning. Derek woke to find her still asleep. She looked different, less tense, more human. Linnea was already awake, sitting near the fire and drawing again. Derek walked over and sat beside her. She looked up at him with sleepy eyes and smiled. "She dreamed of stars," the girl whispered, pointing at her mother. She said the stars were quiet again. Derek didn't understand what it meant, but he nodded anyway. He felt it too. Something had changed in the cabin. The silence was no longer empty. It was peaceful. Outside, the wind had stopped, and for the first time in days, sunlight touched the windows. A new day had begun, and with it, something more than just survival. Maybe, just maybe, a new life had started to *. The days passed. Slowly but gently, Vetra no longer slept by the door. Linya laughed now and smiled when she drew. And Derek started waking up to the smell of warm food. The quiet rhythm of their new life began to feel normal, almost peaceful. But peace never lasts long. Not in the outer colonies, and certainly not for someone hiding from powerful people. It started with the sound of engines in the distance. Derek heard them before he saw anything. He stepped outside to check, pretending to collect wood. 2 black patrol transports hovered low near the edge of the forest, too close, too curious when he returned to the cabin. His face was tense. Vetra noticed. Immediately, "Is it them?" she asked, voice shaking. "Could be," Derek replied. "They're not local police, that's for sure." Vetra pulled Linya closer to her and didn't say another word. That night, Derek opened the trapdoor in the floor. The small basement wasn't much, but it was hidden and warm. "Go down if they come," he said, handing Vetra a small flashlight. "Don't speak, don't move. No matter what you hear." She nodded, but her hands were trembling. "I don't want Linya to see that place." "Again," she whispered. "It's not a cage," Derek said softly. "It's a shelter." Still, her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. The next morning, someone knocked on the door. Not soft this time, but sharp and hard. Derek answered with a calm face and strong eyes. 3 men stood outside, dressed in dark uniforms with no badges. One of them smiled, too cold to be kind. "Sorry to bother you," the man said. "Just routine checks. We heard someone saw non-human activity near this sector." Derek shrugged. "Plenty of animals in the forest." "You know," the man leaned on the doorway, scanning the room behind Derek. "You live alone." "Always have," Derek replied, his tone dry. The man stepped closer, his boots muddy with snow. "Mind if we take a look around?" Derek didn't move. "Actually, I do mind, unless you've got a warrant." The second man narrowed his eyes. "Funny how protective you are over an empty cabin." Derek crossed his arms. "Funny how fast people forget the law once they wear a black coat." There was silence for a second, heavy and sharp. Then the lead man chuckled. "We'll be back, friend. I'll be here," Derek answered, closing the door slowly inside the basement. Vetra held Linya tight. She had heard everything, every word. When Derek opened the hatch and told them it was clear, Vetra didn't climb out at first. She looked up at him with wide eyes. "You lied for us. I told the truth," Derek said. "I live alone, but now I live better." That night, no one slept. Vetra cleaned the place quietly, trying to act normal. Linya sat on Derek's lap while he told her stories of Earth's animals: lions, elephants, whales. She listened like she was hearing magic. But the fear was still in the air, like a smell that wouldn't go away. The next day, more ships flew over the cabin. Low and slow, Derek knew they were scanning, maybe even listening. He turned off all outside signals, blocked the solar uplinks, and disabled the drone cameras. It wouldn't be long now. They were hunting, and they were close. He sat Vetra down that evening and looked her straight in the eyes. "We can't stay here," he said. "It's not safe anymore. Where can we go?" she asked, voice thin. "There's a safe route through the mountain trails. Leads to an old smuggler's hangar," he explained. "I still have the codes." Vetra didn't answer right away. She stared at Linya, who was now sleeping with a soft cloth doll Derek had made for her. "If we leave," she said, "we'll always be running." "No," Derek said. "If we leave together, we'll be surviving that night." He packed supplies, food, tools, old ID chips, and one small emergency communicator. Vetra packed a single bag for herself and Linya. She didn't take much, just a blanket, a scarf, and Linya's drawings, before they left. Vetra touched the cabin wall one last time. "Thank you," she whispered. Like the home itself had saved them, Derek turned off all power, made it look abandoned, and together they stepped out into the cold night. The stars above were bright and watching, and somewhere out there, trouble was still hunting, but they were moving now, quiet, careful, but not broken. They were no longer hiding. They were escaping, together. Snow crunched under their boots as Derek led the way through the dark forest trail. The trees were tall and heavy with ice, their branches creaking in the cold wind. Vetra walked silently behind him, holding Linya close to her chest. The child was wrapped in layers of cloth, her head resting on her mother's shoulder. But her big eyes were open, watching everything. They had been walking for hours, deeper into the wildlands, far from roads and scanners. The smuggler's hangar was still a day's journey ahead, hidden beneath a frozen cliff. Derek knew the path well. His father once used it to escape debts. Now Derek used it to escape something much worse. They stopped near a small cave for shelter. Derek built a fire using old, dry moss and heated stones. Vetra laid Linya down on a folded blanket and sat beside her. No one spoke for a while. Only the fire crackled. Then Linya sat up slowly, rubbing her eyes. She looked at Derek and pointed to the stars above, visible through the trees. "You made the stars quiet," she said softly, her voice clear for the first time. Derek looked at her in surprise. "You're speaking?" he whispered. Linya nodded. "Mama said don't talk before the fear is gone." Vetra turned to her daughter in shock. "You remember that?" she asked, her voice breaking. Linya smiled gently. "You said it when I was still inside your belly." Derek blinked. Unsure if he'd heard right, she remembers that far back. Vetra nodded slowly, her face pale. "Yes. She's always remembered things no child should." Linya stood and walked to Derek, handing him a small drawing from her coat. It showed a long silver ship with strange lights around it, floating above. "A tall building. She drew this 2 weeks ago," Vetra said. "The same day we passed near a government research base, but she never saw the ship herself." Derek studied the picture closely. The symbols, the structure, none of it was human design, and yet the lines were too perfect for a child. "How does she know all this?" he asked. "I don't know," Vetra whispered. "Sometimes I wonder if she's seeing something from another time or another place." Linya took Derek's hand and pointed to her own forehead. "Sometimes I dream with my eyes open," she said, "and the stars talk when they move." Derek didn't understand what she meant, but he felt something heavy settle in his chest. This child wasn't ordinary. She was something the world wasn't ready for. That night, as they slept near the fire, Derek kept watch with his weapon. Ready, he listened to the wind, the trees, and Linya's soft words as she talked in her sleep. Her voice shifted between different tones, some like singing, others like whispering code. Vetra sat up once and said, "That's the voice she hears in her dreams." In the morning, Derek found Linya drawing again, this time using a stick in the snow. She carved shapes that looked like maps, but none matched anything Derek had seen. He copied them onto a notebook just in case. "I think she's trying to guide us," he said. Vetra nodded. "Maybe she knows where we'll be safe." Later that day, they reached a ridge overlooking the frozen cliffs. Below, hidden under thick snow and rock, was the entrance to the smuggler's hangar. Derek smiled. "We made it." But Linya suddenly stopped walking and held her head. Her eyes went wide, her lips trembling. "What's wrong?" Derek asked, rushing to her. She looked up at him, her voice trembling. "They're coming," she said. "The black coat men." They followed our sound. Vetra gasped and looked behind them, but the trail was clear. No ships, no movement, Derek said. But Linya just whispered again. They hear the fire, not the footsteps. Derek didn't question it. He grabbed both of them and rushed toward the hidden entrance. He used a rusted keycard to open the underground hatch. It slid open with a groan. Revealing darkness and cold steel, they entered the hangar, closing the hatch behind them. Inside was an old ship. Dusty and broken, but still standing. I helped my dad repair this place as a kid. Derek said it should still run. Maybe Vetra looked at the ship, uncertain. Linya, however, walked up to it and placed her hand on the control panel. Lights flickered, then glowed. The ship hummed softly, waking like an old beast from sleep. She's activating it, Derek whispered. Vetra stared, her mouth open. I don't understand how. But she's connected to something. The walls of the hangar lit up slowly, and screens blinked alive. Derek ran to the main console, fingers moving. Quickly, she just saved us 10 hours of work, he said, smiling. Vetra looked at Linya and whispered, What are you, my child? Linya turned and hugged her mother tightly. I'm yours, she whispered. But they'll never stop coming unless we go higher. Derek turned to them, serious now. We're leaving tonight, he said. The stars are calling, and this time, we're answering back. Asterisk the hangar lights flickered overhead as Derek worked quickly at the ship's console. Dust and ice fell from the ceiling every time the old generator coughed. Vetra stood beside Linya, who was now silent. Eyes glowing faintly under the blinking control panel. The air felt tense, like something big was about to happen. They all knew time was running out. Derek checked the power levels, fuel cells, and navigation system. We've got enough to make orbit, he said. But if they catch us before launch, we're finished. Vetra didn't blink. Then we don't let them catch us, Linya whispered. They're close now. 3 ships. One has dogs. Derek stared at the child. How do you know that? Linya pointed to her head. They think loud. Vetra wrapped her arms around her daughter and looked at Derek. She warned us before, and she was right. Derek grabbed an old rifle and checked the charge. I can hold them off long enough. For you two to take off, he said calmly. Vetra stepped forward, shaking her head. No, we go together. Or not at all, Derek looked at her. Heart beating faster. If I don't stop them, they'll blow the ship before it lifts. We'll fight with you, she said. You're not trained. We're not helpless. Outside, the rumble of engines grew louder. Vetra's eyes widened. They're here. Derek looked at Linya. Can you start the ship? Linya stepped toward the console, placed her hand on it again, and whispered something in her language. The ship came alive. Lights blinking across the control boards. Derek stared. Stunned, she's doing it. Vetra looked at her daughter. With a mix of awe and fear, she's more than we ever understood. Linya turned back and said softly, The ship likes me. Suddenly, a loudspeaker echoed from outside. This is sector control. You are harboring fugitives and stolen property. Open the door, or we will force entry. Derek cursed under his breath. They're calling her stolen property. Vetra's face went pale with rage. She's my daughter, she growled. Not a thing. Derek ran to the entrance and sealed the blast door. He activated the defense panel. But half the weapons were offline. Half the turrets are dead, he said. We'll have to buy time the old way. Vetra picked up a plasma cutter, holding it like a blade. I was beaten for years. She said, I can fight once. Derek nodded, handing her a small shield. Stay behind cover. Strike when you must. The door shook under heavy impact. They were trying to cut through. Derek and Vetra stood side by side, weapons ready. Hearts pounding, Linya sat in the ship, still calm, guiding the systems. She's activating shields. Derek whispered, watching the readings spike. She's shielding us from the inside. They'll notice, Vetra said. Let them. The door exploded. And masked soldiers poured in. Derek fired first, dropping the lead scout. Plasma bolts lit the room with blue light. Vetra moved. Fast, slicing one soldier's leg and taking cover behind metal crates. The enemy didn't expect resistance. They thought it would be easy. They were wrong for 10 long minutes. Derek and Vetra held the line. Vetra moved like a shadow. Striking fast and disappearing, Derek's aim was deadly, his body fueled by purpose. Then a sound echoed above the gunfire. The engine of the ship roared to life. Linya stood at the open ramp, her hair glowing slightly under the ship's light. Get in, she said, her voice louder than before. They're calling for more men. We must leave now. Derek nodded, grabbed Vetra's arm and ran toward the ramp. Shots flew past them. But the ship's shields took the hit. They climbed. Inside, just as the doors began to close, Linya touched the console, and the ship rose from the ground, from the air. They could see the black-coat soldiers scattering. But none of them could follow now. The ship pierced the clouds, breaking free into the stars above, inside. Vetra collapsed on the floor, breathing hard. Derek fell beside her. Laughing from exhaustion, you really weren't helpless, he said between breaths. She looked at him and smiled. Neither were you. Linya sat calmly in the pilot seat, her hands resting on the glowing screen. She turned to them and said, Now we choose where to go. Derek stood up, looking out the window at the endless stars, somewhere safe where no one owns anyone. Vetra placed her hand on his. Somewhere we can just live. Linya smiled. Somewhere we belong. And together they flew toward it, into the unknown. But for the first time, the future felt like their choice. The stars outside the window stretched like rivers of light as the ship moved through hyperspace. The engines hummed softly, steady and strong. Inside the ship, peace had finally settled in, not the silence of fear, but the quiet that follows escape, the kind of quiet that lets you breathe again. Derek stood at the window, watching galaxies drift by. His hands rested on the frame, eyes full of thought. Behind him, Linya was laughing, chasing a floating robot drone through the hallway. Her laughter echoed through the ship like music. He smiled without turning. Vetra walked up beside him, her steps soft. She looked better, now stronger, cleaner, more alive. The bruises had faded from her skin, but not from her memories. Still, her shoulders no longer curled in fear. She stood tall, even when she said nothing. She laughs now, Derek said. Nodding toward Linya, she plays. Vetra's eyes shimmered. I never thought I'd hear her laugh again. You gave her that chance. Derek said. Vetra turned to him. No, you did. Derek looked at her gently. We all did, together. Then he walked to the control panel and tapped. In new coordinates. A small moon on the edge of free space, he said. No slavers, no patrols, no empires. Just farmers, traders, and old machines. Vetra nodded slowly. That sounds perfect. Linya peeked into the room, holding her cloth doll. Is this our home now? She asked. Not yet, Derek said, kneeling beside her. But it will be. They arrived 3 days later. The moon was quiet, full of silver fields and blue skies. Tiny houses scattered across the land, old towers blinking in the distance. The people there didn't ask questions. They welcomed strangers if they brought peace. Derek traded old parts from the ship for supplies and tools. He fixed a small house near the lake, rebuilt the roof, added a second room. Vetra planted roots, real ones, in real soil. Her hands dug the earth, her feet touched ground. She didn't fear. She smiled more now, even laughed. Linya went to a little school run by an old droid and a kind woman with missing fingers. She made friends, drew pictures, and learned words in 3 new languages. But sometimes, at night, she still talked. In her sleek strange, ancient words that no one understood, Derek recorded them, just in case they ever needed to know. One evening, they all sat by the fire outside their new home. The stars were bright, the lake was still, and the air smelled like clean wind. Linya leaned her head on Derek's arm, her voice soft. "Can we stay forever?" Derek looked at Vetra, who nodded. "Yes," he said. "This is forever now." Later, after Linya had gone to sleep, Vetra and Derek sat under the sky. The fire cracked, and the night felt calm. "She calls you Papa now," Vetra said quietly. Derek smiled. "I heard she never had one," she whispered. "Not one she could remember." Derek turned toward her, his voice gentle. "I'm not trying to replace anyone. You're not," she said. "You're just here, and that's enough." They sat in silence, hand in hand, not as strangers, not as saviors, but as something new, something fragile and strong at the same time. A family made not by blood, but by choice and by love, born in the darkest places. Weeks passed, then months. The Empire never came. The Blackcoat men never found them, and even if they did, Linya was growing, learning, glowing, whatever gift she carried inside her. It was becoming brighter. One morning, she ran into the kitchen and shouted, "Papa, Mama, look what I made." She held a tiny floating light, just energy, pure and soft. Derek stared in awe. "How did you do that?" "I dreamed it," she said proudly. "Then I woke up, and it was in my hand." Vetra hugged her tight eyes, full of wonder and fear. "She's becoming something more," she whispered. Derek placed a hand on her shoulder. "Whatever she becomes, she'll never be alone that night." They all stood on the porch and watched the stars. Linya pointed to one and said, "That one's waiting for me." Derek asked, "Will you go one day?" "Maybe," she said, "but not until you say I can." He smiled and kissed her forehead. "Then I hope you stay a long time." She leaned against him and whispered, "I will, because this is my real beginning." And above them, the stars shimmered like a blanket of hope, because somewhere deep in the galaxy, a girl once begged for food. A man once opened a door, and together, they became something the galaxy had never seen. A family born of fire, kindness, and choice.